Ben was stuck in a room with walls slowly closing in, desperately solving a puzzle in a last-ditch effort to escape. Despite his best attempts, the puzzle proved too difficult. He then tried to escape through a vent, but it was no use. He was trapped. Meanwhile, Zoe, a physics student, had recently attended a presentation about the quantum Zeno effect, a theory which suggests that if you observe a system, it cannot change. This theory stuck with her, especially after her lecturer challenged her to take a risk over the Thanksgiving break. Zoe soon found herself involved in a curious challenge, a puzzle box that had been given to her, Ben and Jason. They were all close friends and had received these boxes as a personal challenge from those closest to them. The puzzle box intrigued them, and after some thinking, they solved it. Inside was a clue that led them to the Minus escape room, a place where they had to solve a series of puzzles in order to win a grand prize of $10,000. The game was high stakes and everyone was eager to see what would happen next. In the waiting area, they met others who would join their team: Amanda, a war veteran; Danny, a die-hard escape room enthusiast; and Mike, a former miner. Together, they were about to face a challenge they hadn't imagined. Ben, frustrated by the lack of progress in the room, tried to leave for a smoke. However, as he turned the door handle, it suddenly fell off. They all tried to fix it, but the door wouldn't budge, leaving them trapped. As the group surveyed the room, Mike spotted an oven temperature gauge on the door and a copy of Fahrenheit 451. Zoe, intrigued, set the temperature to 451 degrees Fahrenheit. Suddenly, the heat panels in the room powered up, and the temperature began to rise. Panic spread quickly as everyone, except Danny, who was skeptical about the heat, started to feel the intense warmth. Just as the group began to panic, a phone call reminded them to follow the rules of the game. Zoe then noticed a sign telling them to place coasters under their drinks. When 6 coasters were pressed down together, an escape vent opened. Jason was the first to crawl into the vent, followed by Mike and Amanda. Zoe realized she needed water to hold the coaster down, but Amanda had already used hers. With the help of Ben and Danny, Zoe was able to escape just before the room filled with flames. The group crawled through the vent and emerged into a mountain cabin. They found a clue on the wall, a 7-letter name. Ben remembered a childhood song and shouted, "Rudolph!" Jason entered the code and the door opened. Moving on, they found themselves on a frozen stream. After a tragic accident, with Danny falling through the ice, the group used their warmth to melt the ice, retrieve a key, and escape. However, just as hope sparked, the ice beneath them started to crack. They ran, barely escaping the collapsing floor behind them. Next, they entered an upside-down bar with pool tables. As they walked in, the entire room seemed to shift in altitude, throwing them off balance. Mike spotted a red telephone attached to a pool table, and as the cord dropped from the ceiling, he caught it and answered. A warning came through, urging them to be careful. Music began playing, followed by an ear-piercing dial-up tone. A door was visible, but without a doorknob. Mike guessed that the missing 8-ball from the pool table could be the doorknob, though it was hidden somewhere in the bar. Ben managed to catch Mike just in time as a section of the floor gave way beneath him. The group began to search the bar for the missing 8-ball. Each time they failed, the floor shook again. As the room seemed to collapse, Amanda scaled the back wall behind the bar and discovered a safe with a 4-digit code. The group tried to figure out the code, but they struggled until Zoe solved a sliding tile puzzle that revealed the numbers. However, even with the code, the safe wouldn't open. In a panic, Zoe reached for a pool stick but lost her grip and fell to the floor. The entire tile puzzle panel fell off, and Zoe briefly passed out, having a flashback about a plane crash in which she was the only survivor. When she regained consciousness, she knew what to do. The numbers in the code had to be entered inverted and backward, just like the surroundings of the room. Zoe instructed Amanda to input the code in reverse order. Amanda manages to unlock the 8-ball, but cannot safely join the group. As she falls to her death, she throws the 8-ball to Jason, sacrificing herself. The survivors enter a room that resembles a hospital ward, with beds similar to those they were treated in after their near-death experiences. Jason finds a report detailing his rescue by the Coast Guard after his boat capsized in icy waters. Zoe survived a plane crash. Mike was the only miner pulled alive after a cave-in. Ben lost all his friends in a drunk driving accident. The survivors learned that they were all brought to the escape room on purpose to test who would be the luckiest of the lucky. The game's puzzles were designed around their past traumatic experiences. A TV broadcast warns them that they have only 5 minutes to live unless they put their heart into it. The room will fill with toxic gas once time runs out. Jason, Ben, and Mike find an EKG machine to figure out the best heart rate for escaping. Zoe, thinking of the quantum Zeno effect, destroys the room's cameras hoping to find an escape. In a tragic mistake, Jason shocks Mike with the defibrillator too many times, accidentally killing him, believing a fast heart rate would save them. As the toxic gas begins to flood the room, Jason connects himself to the EKG, letting his heart rate drop below 50 beats per minute. He and Ben manage to escape when the door to the next room opens, but Zoe stays behind, pretending to faint and die after disconnecting the final camera. Jason and Ben enter the fifth room, filled with optical illusions. Ben confronts Jason, accusing him of not being a true survivor because of his reckless actions, especially with Mike and Zoe. Ben forces Jason to confess that he killed his roommate to survive at sea by using a red parka. As they unlock a hatch to the next room, they get infected by a psychedelic substance. Ben finds the antidote, and the two fight for survival. Jason breaks Ben's leg, but Ben kicks him into a table corner, killing him instantly. Ben injects the antidote and shakes off the effects of the psychedelic substance, heading to the final room. The last room mirrors the first, and Ben manages to control the fireplace flames, using them as a crawl space to avoid being crushed by the walls. He enters the final room and meets the Game Master, the mastermind behind the escape room. The Game Master reveals that the game was designed around certain themes, like college athletes and soul survivors, with bets placed on the winners. Ben believes he's won and is ready to leave, but the Game Master tries to kill him to keep the game's secrets hidden. Meanwhile, Zoe is still alive, having removed an oxygen mask from a hospital bed and snuck through the disabled cameras. Pretending to be dead, she kills two cleaners who enter the room to destroy evidence, then escapes to where Ben is. Zoe saves Ben just in time, and together they defeat the Game Master, escaping the deadly game. Though they are treated for their injuries, by the time Zoe brings the investigators to the escape room facility, all evidence has been wiped clean. However, Zoe manages to trace the game's location to New York using the facility's emblem. 6 months later, unbeknownst to them, the game's designer is already planning their next trap. He sets their flight to New York as another escape room with only a 4% chance of survival.